everybody could take one of these, and if you could get out your cell phones or iPad, or hopefully everybody has some tool with them, because you'll need to use the tool. I'm Belinda Gimbert from Educational Administration and Ed Studies, and this is Becky Parker. She is our project's senior manager. And what we're going to share with you today is a couple of practical things about logic models, maybe some little advice and suggestions, and then actual specific examples. So on the front sheet that you have a description of the project, which is called Mobilizing National Educator Talent. And on the website of that, you've actually got the example of our logic model. Now, in our proposal, the word, three-letter word was in there, and it was may include a logic model. Our advice to you would be, if you see those three letters together, that means do include. Please put one in, because if nothing else, it often will make your proposal stand out from somebody else's who doesn't have one. As Richard already said, a logic model clearly pulls together in a very short space all the pieces of your project. And we all know that saving space in a proposal is very important. So when we put this proposal together and we were struggling with the 50-page double-space, 12-point, all that kind of stuff, there was a question as to whether we would include the logic model or not, because those three letters were there, may include. Well, we decided that it was worth cutting out some of the text because the picture was worth 1,000 words. So that would be our advice, our initial advice. The other thing is, you're going to get some good examples of logic models here today. What you have to do is look at the context of your project, because it's just like doing work in one school system and shifting it to another. It's the context that is really important. So you have to make sure that you look at the examples and think about all the pieces that are in your project. Just don't try to take one and make things force fit. All right, get your cell phones. Scan on the bottom, you've got a QR code on the bottom of the front sheet. If you don't have something that you can scan, or you don't already have a QR reader on your cell phone or your iPad, then the website is there. It is down the bottom. Go to www.teachmnet.org. So get yourself there, because we have purposely posted our information into our LMS system so that you have an opportunity to go in, because when we talk about inputs and outputs and outcomes and resources, if it's all atextual, then you're not going to take away as much from today's session. So get yourself in there. While you're doing that, I'm going to give you a little bit of the context without reading this to you. But our project, it is truly an innovative, it's a non-traditional teacher preparation program, in the sense that if you are not coming into a traditional program, typically at age 18 and graduating around about age 22, then these are the kinds of programs that school systems, non-profits, for-profits, I don't know if you know, but actually IBM runs their own teacher preparation program. Not sure if you're aware, but you can actually get certified in Ohio these days without having to go through any institution of higher ed. So there are a lot of non-traditional routes. You might have heard the word alternative. Sometimes conjures up a bit of a negative connotation. It's really just a different pathway among multiple pathways for an individual who wants to become a teacher to get certified to be a teacher. And in high-need states, such as Texas, this is a critical need. So if you look at the map on that front page, I'm hoping by talking that all of you have got to the website in some way, shape, or form by now, you'll actually see that we've got 14 partners, meaning that there are still sub-awards within those partners, but there are 14 primary locations in the U.S. that this grant is operating through. And those are all states, 12 states, and then we have Washington, have D.C., as well as Puerto Rico. All right, given you're all there now, if you also look, you will see that there is an LMS where Becky's got the, up here, I should have my laser pointed, MNet LMS, click on that, and then it comes up with username.
It's going to take you to a login page. I already logged in, so.
Right. You'll come up with a username and a password. Look at the sheet, your username and your password. Everybody is guest at knott.org. And then the password for this week, which you can use it all till Sunday night, I guess, is
Monday morning.
HIGUNI28. No space, HIGUNI28. Okay, once you're in, it'll look like what Becky's got. Scroll down a little bit and you'll see underneath our calendar, just temporarily, we've posted 3 files. One's the logic model, one is a PDF of the presentation, and the third one is the MNet flyer. So you actually have the hard copy of the flyer or the brochure, and you have the hard copy of the example of the logic model. What you don't have is the PowerPoint, all right, the PDF of the PowerPoint. So open the PDF of the PowerPoint, so now you've got 3 pieces in front of you. Okay, so what?
Belinda, would you say yes at not with 3 T's?
Yes, yes, it's on the front. I wrote it on the front.
Oh, good.
It's on the front of the handout.
Gotcha.
Printed it. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we weren't quite sure just to what extent there was going to be a little bit about, logic model, the purpose of a logic model. So I know we're going to stick within our time. This will be available, but I think it's really important because there's no point doing a logic model if you don't have a real purpose for doing it. Just putting one in for a proposal for the sake of it actually could end up doing yourselves a disservice if you really haven't thought through the pieces. So, the purpose, why do we have a logic model? And why do we use it in program planning and evaluation? And from our perspective, we wanted to share with you what is our TTT, which is Transition to Teaching. That's where this grant is funded at the Office of Innovation and Improvement, the same as Jerry's and Emily's. What does it look like in practice and how have we used it? So for most of you, you've figured out now, it could look like the 2 examples you've seen so far, with lots of boxes and lots of text, right? But it could also be a diagram. It could be a picture. It doesn't have to just be words. But what it has to show is this logical relationships amongst the resources that are invested, the activities that are going to take place, and as Karen already said, the benefits of the change that will result. And we use this too in our proposal as a tool. So it's not just a model. It's also a tool in which we can advocate the program's effectiveness. It clarifies the strategies underlying the program. It builds common understanding. It communicates what your program is or is not. Remember, is not. Sometimes the reviewers need to understand the boundaries. Is not. That's important. And the piece that very important for us is that it forms a basis for evaluation. Becky's going to talk a little bit about that. Sometimes in a proposal, the evaluation piece gets missing. I'm not sure how many of you have third-party evaluators or external evaluators, and often they feel like just a hanging appendage. You really need to make sure that they are part of the process of building your logic model, because they're an integral piece of what your outcomes of your project are going to look like in text when you report back to in our case, back to the feds. I think we can go on for the second time. So for us, one of our program goals, and if you now take a look at the either online or you take a look at the actual model, you'll be able to see what our actual overarching goals are. And I really like the way Karen said that you actually don't work from right to left. You should be working from left to right. You should work from right to left. Clearly, I teach math, not reading. So these are our overarching goals. And remember that the overarching goals are not something that you magically just make up. They have to align with the priorities of your proposal. Whatever the RFP is, they've got specific program goals, overarching program goals, and you have to make sure that your goals for your project align with those. In this case, there were 4 priorities, and so we had 4 major goals. You've already heard a little bit about the situation. It's really important when you're brainstorming what your logic model is going to look and sound like, that you clearly come up with a statement, a short statement that describes the situation for your project. This text should also be in your proposal. So it's not as if you're reinventing something and then you're going to throw it away. Keep this and use this in your proposal. The other thing that helps is a reviewer to connect the dots, because oftentimes you've got to really connect those dots for them. look at our actual model here on paper or online, and you can see the first thing we worked with were the assumptions and the external factors. Again, often those come in hindsight. Go to those pieces first. We chose to put them specifically at the bottom of our logic model because we wanted to stress to the reviewers that these are actually holding up the model. It's kind of like an image that we tried to get through to them. That the external factors and the assumptions are really a piece that we have explored thoroughly, and we know that they're providing a concrete foundation. Next piece. All right, these are some of the questions that we asked ourselves when we first started putting together each of the pieces of our logic model. So we said, what resources are we putting into the program? We said, what activities or programs are needed to achieve the outcomes? We asked, what are the outputs or the measurable products? And then the last one, it was what we're trying to achieve. Right? I know you can't. You can probably see. That's okay. So go to the next page. All right. That's fine. We're going to look at inputs and outputs. We designed our logic model to make sure it matched our management plan and the actual outcomes, objectives and outcomes of the project itself. So when you see this logic model here, parallel to that was the development of the outcomes of the objectives and the management plan. I'm calling it a management plan, and I'm not sure if too many of you are familiar with a management plan, but at a later date, if you want examples of a management plan, we can also detail that for you as well. So we started with inputs, and we looked at what are the inputs that are required for our project, and I know you can all read. So if you look down that line, those are the basic ones that I would pretty much expect all of you to be thinking about when you're looking at inputs for your projects. There might be some variations and some additionals, but for the most part, it's the staff. And when for us, one of our critical staff needs were what we call SMEs, not to be confused with Smurfs, but SMEs are subject matter experts. So we call them a SME. And staff, predominantly for us, are incredibly important when it comes to the pedagogical content knowledge for beginning teachers and also their content knowledge. So we thought thoroughly about staff and subject matter experts. 5 minutes. Then we look at the outputs. The outputs we put together in terms of activities and partners because we are a collective group, a synergetic team. OSU is the umbrella, but we are not the only workers in this project. So we had to think about who are the partners and what roles and responsibilities will they have and what are the activities that they will do as part. And there are some acronyms in here. It's okay to use acronyms in your proposal. Just make sure in your actual text that you explain what those are. And I'll just give you an example. It says develop the VLE. That stands for Virtual Learning Environment. I think we've talked about those, and you'll have the PowerPoint to be able to review. Okay, inputs, we also need to think about HR, facilities, equipment. Remember, some projects don't really take too kindly to a whole bunch of equipment and supplies. And for most of us, you've got to think about the supplant versus supplement. So be careful as you are naming those kinds of equipment and supplies, partners and technology. Right, I think the activities are just detailing a little more. The outputs. Okay, I think we discussed all of those. Keep going. All right, I turn it over to Becky for hours.
So one of the things that we try to do is to make sure this is a 5-year grant. So to help that reviewer and to help us plan out over the course of that 5 years, we developed short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, and we spelled them out in there, and that helped them see the sequence of the activities over time. And then you'll see the overarching goals at the far right side. And so if you look across there, it begins to build that picture, it begins to connect all those pieces that Belinda just went through. And so this helped us also in the management plan kind of chunk out budget. So it all fits together as you work through the pieces of putting the proposal together. And I'm not going to spend time reading through these. If you have specific questions, we'll be happy to answer those. So you have to factor in your resources and your activities as you're building that for multi-year grants. And even over a year-long grant, you can do the same thing by quarter or by a semester kind of division. But it's important to be able to, you don't do it all up front, you don't do it all at the end, or you don't wait until the end to show the results. And then as it's already been pointed out over and over, what is the impact? And that's the most critical piece, I think. When you're putting something together, it has to show an end result. And so what is the impact of the intended outcome of what you're trying to do? And we chose to not include the evaluation plan. We have a third-party evaluator. We didn't include them as an actual box or an actual pull-out in the logic model. But what we did, and what you have in the PowerPoint that's online, is we've shown you how the evaluation piece connects with the logic model. And they were an intricate part as we built this so that they could begin to see how their evaluation components over the course of time would help us get to those overarching end goals. So we're not going to take time to go through all the evaluation components, but it's in the PowerPoint that you can access online. And I just want to make a claim that by Monday, those 3 documents will be off the LMS. You can't get to them anyway because the password will change and our sites will be like, why did you post these up there? And I don't want to cause a lot of confusion. So you have till Monday to get them down, and then we're going to take those down. And they, the resources will be on the research website, so you can access them from there as well. So these are the evaluation slides at the end, and you can take a look at those. So do you have any questions for us? Awesome. Thank you.